Oh my goodness.
Yep.
I'm so scarfing a cold pizza right now.
A cold pizza?
It sounds fantastic.
It's great.
Actually.
It's great,
I love
actually.
cold pizza. Yeah,
It's great.
it's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, who wants a warm pizza? That's so 2010.
Yeah.
Yeah, warm pizza's horse shit. All the fucking cool people are eating cold pizza.
We should definitely do a podcast on what's the best cold pizza.
What is the best cold? Let's do it now.
Oh,
Actually,
man.
we're rolling now. So we
Pizza Hut thin crust. It has to be thin crust.
thin crust. Yeah, I think
If you get anything more, and then it's
Really?
like it just
Oh,
because then
see-
you're eating cardboard if you're not
See,
if it's like too thick.
I would say Little Caesars, like if you get a Little Caesars hot and ready and you eat like half of it and then you put the rest in the fridge and the next day, the Little Caesars hot and ready, my favorite cold pizza.
Wait,
Hands down.
is it the hot and ready that's got the
Pepperoni.
Detroit style hot and ready, or is
Either
it
way. Either way.
The Detroit style? I'm with you for sure.
Yeah. Either way. I mean, because Little Caesars does the square and they do the regular circle. So
I'm happy to try that sometime. So I have not done the Little Caesars, so I will try that.
do you guys not have Little Caesars up in West Texas?
We do.
Oh, you
we do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well.
I haven't had Little Caesars in a while. So
Okay.
What's the name of
It's,
that pizza place? When we were in Leveland, Steph and I ate at some local pizza place that was pretty good. What, do you know what that is?
oh my gosh, what was that place called? It was it used to be Gaddy's,
Yeah,
but then it
that's-
became oh man.
it's like a name or something. The person's name.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
well, if you're ever in Leveland, go
Fat
to
Guy's Pizza. No, I don't
yeah,
know.
go look for a pizza place that's somebody's name, and they get the highest.
Oh, it's closed. It's a barbecue joint now.
What?
It's Dickie's Barbecue now. So
Dickie's
I'm sorry.
barbecue
Yeah.
pit.
It really is. It's Dickie's Barbecue now.
So listen, folks. I want to make a recommendation. If you're ever in Leveland, Texas, and you want to eat delicious pizza, go to Dickie's Barbecue.
Yes, and order the brisket Frito pie. It's
Yeah,
pretty awesome.
brisket Frito pie. That's the.
The best
Yeah.
pizza place in Leveland closed down to make way for a Dickie's barbecue pit. It does not get like you can't make this shit up, dude. You can't write it. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's
It's true. It's true.
I don't doubt it. I believe you guys 100%. I'm not.
It's awesome.
So-
There is now.
Hey, we're experimenting with something, Dolph. We're experimenting with
you
cold
said-
opens. No, go ahead.
You said folks. Does that mean we're on?
Yeah, we're
Yeah,
on,
we're on,
man.
but we're
Okay.
we might.
Well,
you know.
we went from cold pizza to cold,
Cold
opens.
open.
Something we're doing new in season 4 is rather than just starting everyone the exact same way, we're just
We're
going to
gonna
just start
fly off the handle.
screwing around and then
okay.
eventually
So-
launch into the podcast.
So good thing I hit record a while back. Then.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
really is. Yeah,
Yeah.
because
Pretty much from the time that I called, I hit record. So
yeah, otherwise we would have been in big trouble. Hey, everybody, I thank you so much for listening to the Album of the Year podcast. We're starting season 4 off.
That's right.
And, of course, as always, right here to the right of me is my good buddy Marty
Hey,
Kawa. Marty,
I am here. I am in the house.
man, it's good to be here.
It's good to be
recording another
back. It,
app. It's
it
been
always
a couple
feels
months.
good. It's been, we've been away for a long time, yeah, it's been what, a couple months maybe?
Yeah,
it's been like
absolutely.
6 to 8 weeks since we
Yeah.
last recorded a
We
podcast.
have been a
so-
very, very busy time.
yeah,
a
we've
lot
been
has been going on.
crazy, traveling for the holidays, doing all that madness, and now we're back.
And we have a special guest
We
today.
do.
Since you've already heard his voice, we should go
That's
ahead
right.
and announce him, and then we'll talk a little bit more.
Oh, wow.
But
Okay.
yeah, just special guest, very much.
Special.
One of my oldest friends at this point. Can you
Yeah.
believe that, Dolph? Like I've known you half my life, my dude.
what? No
yeah,
way.
yeah. Well, I'm a lot
Really?
also younger than you, so
Well, it's-
my
that's
half
true.
my life is not as long.
Yeah, because you're 15, right?
Right. I'm 15 now, so I've known you a
Yeah.
good total of at least 7
Let's
years.
see, 2001, right?
2001, so we're going
Wow.
on 19 years, which, okay, it's not
Gosh.
quite half my life, but very, very
It's
close.
for the
Very
most
close.
part. Yeah,
Yeah.
very, very close.
Yeah.
I think it's like a sixth of my life. So
It's
that's,
like
we're good. We're
well,
good.
you're at like a
haven't
500-year-old
worn out your
Jedi or
welcome.
something, right? You're-
Yeah,
yeah.
that's true.
Dolph,
is Dolph-
Dolph was baby Yoda.
Yeah. All
I hear
grown
those
up.
are yummy. Yeah.
What?
You put him on some Canadian pizza.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cold
I'll have
baby
some
Yoda
Yoda on my
next to
cold
the
pizza, please.
pineapple. Dickie's barbecue pit.
So Dolph, I've mentioned on the show multiple times. Thank you guys who've been tuning in for a while now. You may have heard me mention
What?
Dolph.
Now I need to listen to your.
You have to go
some of our
listen
episodes.
to 500 hours of
Yeah.
podcast just to hear the 7
to
times I
find-
dropped your name. Yeah.
Oh, I feel like you talk about Dolph quite a bit on the podcast.
Oh yeah, there was a whole.
Actually.
We did a whole episode about
We did
Dolph.
a Dolph
That
Really?
retrospective.
there was Dolph Mageddon week. That was
right.
really
So-
great.
You know what that means? Now I have to start a podcast and have an episode on Chris, right?
Yeah.
So-
I don't
course,
want that to
of course.
happen. Talk to my lawyer.
Yeah.
I was cease and desist.
and a special guest will be Steph.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's just-
so-
that would be very appropriate based on how
that's
things
great.
have worked in Graceworks. It would just be you and Steph versus me. I totally believe that.
Yeah.
Dolph was in a band with me for a couple years, and off and on. Really, technically, I don't think we broke up at this point. So technically, while we have not played a note in 10 years together, I think we're still in a band.
I consider myself on retainer for our band, for
our
Graceworks.
band.
Yeah.
We're still
Yeah.
we're still sort of in a band, but yeah. So I still call you my drummer sometimes when people are like,
I'm
when
getting
talking about-
verklempt.
Yeah. It's like, oh, my drummer is, he would say something ridiculous like that. That's how I usually use it. No, yeah. So Dolph and I have a great friendship and a great musical friendship, and it was really only a matter of time that we asked Dolph to be on the show. I don't know if it was a matter of time that he said yes, because he might have said no, but I'm very honored that my man did agree to come join us for the season opener for season 4.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, I'm very honored to be asked to be on this podcast. So
Well,
thanks for asking.
It's kind of ironic because I don't know if you even remember, but you and I talked about doing this kind of concept for a podcast like a couple of years before me and Marty started it. So like in some ways, Dolph, it's sort of, we finally got around to doing a podcast together like we talked about all those years ago. Dolph.
So
Yeah.
me and Dolph are going to have to square off in the octagon. Chris.
Yeah,
Is that
it's-
what you're telling me?
Yes.
We're
In
gonna be the
Thunderdome.
undercard before BJ Penn's next fight or something. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. Tina Turner's on my team. So is that
That's a
the
Thunderdome.
Thunderdome, right? Is that a Thunderdome reference? So
I mean, if it's a Thunderdome type fight, my money's on you, Dolph, because I think you cheat a little harder than Marty. But if it's just a square
What?
off, just
Me?
just so you know,
Never.
Marty's like, how tall are you, dude? 6'5"
I'm
or something?
6'4".
6'4",
and
he's
I'm
got
about
a reach too.
275. I'm big. I'm big.
Whoa.
I'm a big
Yeah,
man. I'm a very big man, Dolph. I'm sorry to say.
whoa.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would probably face you off in a sprint. I mean, it would look like you were chasing me, but it would
But
be a
you
sprint.
would just
It
be
would a
faster
race.
than
Yeah.
me, and I would.
Yeah. So
I
that's
would
how
be
we
like
would
the
settle
big
that.
Oh, that's great stuff. So why don't we kind
Nice
of
to meet you, Marty.
It just starts off about you guys
it is
blood
nice,
sport
nice
or
to
something.
meet you too, Dolph. I will see you in the
You're gonna-
octagon.
You're gonna edit a lot of this out, right?
No, it's straight. It's
Straight up, man.
cinema verite, man.
That's
It's-
cinema verite, baby.
it's how
So
I
any-
do feel bad because the one or two of these podcasts that I have had a chance to listen to, I was telling Chris earlier that I feel like it's 2 hours of Chris talking. Marty gets 30 minutes, and then Chris closes for the next hour and a half. So Marty, I'm sorry. You and I are gonna have to share your 30 minutes. I hope
we're
you're
gonna
cool
have to
with that.
split time.
So
It's gonna be tough.
Are you cool with 50-50? So 15
well,
minutes each.
That
Yeah.
sounds great, man.
All right, I think you guys have already
Okay.
talked too much, so let's just let's tone it down. I got a few things I want to
yeah,
say.
I think we burned some of our time there. Yeah.
Yeah, Dolph has. I was joking with him that he doesn't have to listen to the podcast because he lived it. Because he and I used to, we would tour around or play around and stuff. Like we'd ride in the car and talk music, and it was probably about the same ratio of just me gabbing and Dolph just being like, "Shut up," let me talk.
Yeah.
Like right now. Just kidding.
Hasn't changed. We have a
No.
great relationship, but we have a very much not a contentious, but like a jokey, like Stuart Copeland Sting kind of relationship.
It's
always
true.
said.
Chris is so into hair metal, and I'm like, no, dude. You gotta listen. You gotta listen to something like Blur or one of those British bands that nobody knows about unless you read Rolling Stone.
He did play me "Don't Treat Me Bad" Firehose.
Firehouse, Firehouse,
Firehouse, whatever you call Firehose is the Mike Watt.
That's
Minutemen,
a total-
No More D Boone Minutemen band, but But no, we were sitting at the house, Chris's house here after recording our test episode, just to make sure we actually had good chemistry and we could actually hold a conversation for more than a couple of minutes. And we were just hanging out, and I don't know how we got on the topic of hairband.
Yeah.
Why? How?
Well, we were talking. So we were talking about 1990 because we already had a plan to do 1990 as the second episode.
That's right. Yeah.
And so we were trying
to
to
open up with
figure out
63, right?
Right. We were trying to figure out.
Yeah.
In those days I was trying to figure out like how we covered it because it's kind of a music history podcast. But do we talk about stuff we don't like? Like that was the question. Do we address hair metal if nobody likes hair metal?
That's
I mean, do we? And so I was playing like here's like an example of like a guilty pleasure hairband song.
By nobody, you mean you and Marty don't like hair metal, right?
Well, right, yeah. I mean,
you're assuming that you can't assume that nobody likes hair metal.
Let me give a little bit of Dolph's credit.
I mean, hair metal made a lot of money at some point for somebody.
Allegedly, I was too young.
At least one guy liked hair metal.
Yeah, at least one really, really rich guy. It was just
hair metal was an extremely viable capital enterprise. If that's the way you want to look at it.
But
absolutely.
I want to
from a money perspective.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Look, we're just trying to get facts. Dolph's the fact checker guy. Okay. It's
oh, really?
Somebody somewhere listened to hair metal. I'm just saying, motherfuckers.
Yeah, somebody paid some money. Somebody paid someone.
So get the sticks out of your asses and listen to Dr. Feelgood, all right? God, what's wrong with you people?
Absolutely.
Oh, man. Anyway.
Let me talk a little bit about Dolph's bona fides here, just to give you guys an idea of who Dolph is. And Dolph, you can tell me if I'm completely wrong. So,
I cannot wait to hear this.
Yeah, so he was a Sherpa in the Himalayan mountains for several years. He's a yoga instructor. And
that's Yoda.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry, Yoda instructor. No. So Dolph's a drummer extraordinaire, guys. Like, he's one hell of a drummer too, and I gotta say, very fun to play with, and very thoughtful, like musical drummer, and not just a drummer. He's got a lot of musical facets, but one of the things that he's also a professor. Can I call you a professor? Professor Guardiola?
Yeah,
is it?
Totally. Yeah. Well, I'm assistant professor, but yeah, professor is great.
Professor.
Awesome.
I mean, let's just cut the crap and call you professor, okay?
Okay. Well, let me insert here. I think we are going to eventually talk about Neal Peart.
Yeah.
And his nickname was the professor. So I'll happily take on that mantle at least for the next
30 minutes.
2 hours.
Yeah.
3 hours.
Yeah, the episode today is not going to go 3 hours.
Mine and Marty's 15 minutes.
Yeah.
So. I'll be the professor.
Yeah. Well, he is legitimately a professor, and a professor primarily on sound recording, right? Like, so you teach a lot of studio recording and sound recording. Do you do live sound teaching, or is that just kind of?
I don't actually. No.
Yeah, but I mean,
just studio stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Music production. Yeah.
Music production and all of this, and he's taught me a hell of a lot about music production over the years, and So when you talk to with Dolf, and then on top of that, he's just a great music lover and enthusiast, and a guy who loves music of all different types, right? So for all the way from country to western, he likes all different kinds of music. No,
we got both kinds of music,
yeah.
Country and western.
Yeah, but he really is a guy who is. I mean, honestly, you could be the third person on this podcast if you lived anywhere damn near us, dude, because of how your expertise on music. So it's when we're talking to this guy, it's not just an old friend of mine. I mean, this is a guy who's super qualified to give opinions on music and stuff like that. Even though he and I will probably disagree 90% of the time.
85.
We're doing better, man. I saw our averages, and we were about 86.3 right now. So but that's been trending down.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think
I listened to a couple more Prince albums, and so that sort of knocked things down a little bit.
Oh, that's right. You're a Prince guy, Dolph.
That helps.
I heard.
I am. Yes.
Awesome.
Yes.
Well,
what are some of your favorites, Dolph? Just give us an idea of you from a music standpoint. What do you love?
Okay, so here's I've gotten old enough now that it's just so hard to explain to people, especially kids these days. Put those in air quotes, kids these days. I just, now I'm just like, you know what? I'm old. I occasionally listen to new music. I just tell people Beatles, Prince, and Rush. Those are my three.
That's your holy trinity.
That's my top three. And then I love all kinds of other things. beyond that, below that.
Right.
How's
Below
that?
that.
But
yeah.
those three are like the echelon. As the very
for me,
top
I
of
think
the pops. Sure.
I think they were very instrumental in forming a lot of my musical taste, for sure.
Right.
Obviously, I had heard Prince and I had heard the Beatles before hanging out with Dolph. I had heard Rush a few times, and I guess we should go ahead and introduce this. Marty, was there something that you wanted to do?
Well, I just wanted to say, kind of outline what the episode, I guess, is about. And
Sure.
While, getting together, we don't want to be too kind of downtrodden, but we are going to talk about the great Neal Peart today, who about 2 weeks ago, unfortunately left us. And we did want to talk. It was a good reason to get back because it's definitely something I wanted to talk about. I'm a big Rush fan. We know that Dolph, who's here with us, is also a big one, as well as he just stated. And then Chris, you're kind of more of a like a neutral Rush fan, but you're still a fan, right?
I mean, I've seen Rush twice, and I enjoyed it both
too,
times. And Dolph is my in on Rush, and he was very much, it's one of his three favorite bands. As he just said, and influenced him in a lot of ways. And we'll get into that in a sec, Dolph. But because it meant so much to him, and he was so passionate about it, I always felt like, I'm playing guitar for him, kind of lunk-headed Ramones style guitar in a band with a guy who loves Rush. You know what I mean? And it's. I felt like not a sense of, I don't want to say obligation because that sounds really like it was homework, but it was like, let me try to figure this out because this is something Dolph is supremely passionate about. And the more, and I had opinions about Rush before that, that it was, needlessly complicated and, whatever, pretentious. And we'll get in, and my opinions on those changed. They evolved over time. But it was Dolph's, basically Dolph's influence that turned that around for me. So I would say fan may be too far for me, but usually when people talk about Rush, we're like, well, Marty loves Rush and I don't hate them.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
But I will say this, like Neal Peart, obviously an incredible musician and an interesting guy and absolutely worthy of a whole episode on this show. So I will say that 100%. Yeah. So I'm not going to come in like a skeptic or something.
Sure.
But
right. Yeah.
But it'll be fun for me. It's going to be fun to hear you guys talk about it. So.
Yeah. So where do we start when we're talking about someone of Neal Peart's technical prowess, or even just he was the primary songwriter in Rush as well. He wrote over 90% of the band's lyrics.
Right.
Without not to mention obviously being quite possibly one of the greatest drummers ever to play the drums. So I mean, it's kind of tough to know where you start when we're talking about a body of work so cavernous as Neal's. So there's, I guess, a couple of ways I can start. I mean, based on my love for Rush, started, sitting outside my sister's room while she listened to 2112 and Roll the Bones and Presto. And then that's how I became a fan. And then, like Chris said, I saw him live a couple of times. And I didn't really know or understand a lot about music when I first became a fan. So I didn't understand how effective and efficient and ridiculous his drumming was until way, way later in my life. Around the time I saw them live and around the time I copped the Different Stages live 3-disc live album that actually had, so
that's one of my favorites. Yeah.
So amazing. And, they have the rhythm method and they go into the drum solo or leave that thing alone. And they go into the rhythm method. And the day I found out he passed away, I listened to that. I was in my car driving and I immediately just said, "Hey, Siri, play this." I was just gonna anyway. I just my phone and my iPad just went off anyway.
Oh sure,
Sorry.
Yeah, thanks. I got the HomePod in here.
Yeah, sorry, Chris, but so I had Siri put that on in my car and drove home a different person because Neal Peart was no longer Neal Peart was no longer with us. But I mess up his last name sometimes. But that's kind of my
common.
Yeah. When it comes to Neal and his, like I said, his body of work, his cavernous body of work, if you will. So
sure, yeah. Yeah, that was kind of that day was, I was sitting actually in my office.
Yeah.
It was the Friday before classes started for this semester. And I was actually advising a student. We were signing him up for classes, and I got a text from one of my music buddies, and he texted one word, "fuck." And whenever he texts that one word, I'm like, oh great, who died? Yeah. And so I told the student, I was like, hold on a second, and I pulled up my Facebook and I saw, the initial post, and I was like, oh my God. So I was like, so now I have to finish advising this kid, without, just totally
losing it. Yeah.
Yeah. And so anyway, we got through all that, and then I got a phone call from a friend of ours, Jonathan Smither.
Of course. Bass player in our band for a while. Yeah.
Yeah. So he actually called me and he says, oh man, have you heard the news? I was like, yeah, And so we talked a little bit. And so I started getting some texts from other friends that knew I was a big Rush fan, and especially being the drummer and it being Neal, so. So anyway, so I was kind of dazed after that. Yeah. For the rest of the afternoon and driving home. Same thing, I pulled up some Rush on my iPod on the drive home and just started listening.
I think
go ahead.
An interesting thing about Neal's legacy, when it comes to virtuosic playing and when it comes to the level of musicianship required to play the parts that he created, there's a lot of really amazing musicians out there that only, like Jaco Pastorius, only bass players like Jaco Pastorius,
Sure, yeah.
Buddy Rich, Max Roach, those are drummers and drummers that drummers like,
Sure.
Neal Peart was an everyman. Neal Peart, his influence went from, not only musicians, guitarists, bass players, and the like, but I mean, he was loved in the hip hop community. I'm going to read something here. Wow, man. Neal Peart, drummer in the super legendary band Rush, has died from brain cancer at the age of 67. This has been one of my idols since my teenage years. I've been going to their concerts since 1981. My last show in 2008, Snakes and Arrows tour. That is from DJ Premier. Of the hip hop group Gangstar, who was an incredibly huge Rush fan, saw them live since he was a kid, and so the worlds that Neal Peart penetrated were deeper than just went incredibly deep and were incredibly profound. So
agreed.
I don't know if you can attest
here's
to that.
Here's my thought on that, though. I think part of it is obviously incredible drumming, but you do make a good point that like. His reach went beyond just drum nerds or something. Sure. I mean, drum nerds loved him. Like, don't get me wrong, right? But I mean, he's in the. I would say he's in the Mount Rushmore of drummers. Would you agree with me on that?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. He's
I would argue that he's the most air drummed drummer.
Yep.
Like his drum parts are known probably by people who aren't drummers, and when the drum fills in Tom Sawyer. Yeah. Come on, you see people who aren't drummers flailing their hands, playing all those, those imaginary drums, So, I think, go ahead.
I think as a writer is the other part of it, though, is that because he was a writer and because it was well known that he was kind of the major. I mean, obviously, you can't say there's one major creative force in Rush because all three of those guys, and we haven't even really addressed who Rush is for those who are kind of like, who are they even talking about? We should get into that in a second. But Rush is a band with three guys in it, Geddy Lee, Alex Lifeson, and Neal Peart, all pretty much virtuosos and extremely creative people.
Not to be mistaken for a hair band.
Not to be mistaken for a hair band. Although they did have some wild hair from time.
Chris.
Did I call them a hair band at one point?
I don't know. I think you wanted to lump them in initially with that.
What? Are you serious, Dolf? All right, podcast
I'm
over.
serious. Yeah,
we're done.
Well,
we're done here.
Listen, when you go to war, there's going to be some casualties of war, and like I can't cut up all the different subcategories of dudes with
Chris's defense.
Big,
all
long,
those hair
hair.
metal bands. We're trying to be Geddy. They had the really high-pitched voice like Geddy, so
I think Geddy would dispute some of that, but
sure,
responsibility for it. But I don't know. I mean, I don't think of them as a hair band now. If I ever said that,
right?
then, obviously that's off.
I don't think you call them that. I think you insinuated that they were of that caliber.
This is no joke. I think I said something negative about Rush in the first month that I know Dolph, and I don't think he forgave me for 6 months. I really think that's true.
Yeah.
That's something you've told
Dolph
me.
will back that up. This is true.
You've told me that a few different times.
Yeah.
Those 6 months aren't over yet.
That's a very long. In Dolph years, 6 months is like 62 years.
Yeah, actually. When we're 75 and we're in nursing homes and we're
Dolph ages slower than the rest of humanity.
Yeah.
This is actually true.
This is true. Yeah. It's true.
How old are you, Dolph? Like 67?
214.
Oh,
actually.
okay. All right.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Wow. Wow.
Yeah, it's a little known fact. He actually signed the Declaration
Oh,
of Independence.
whoa, my
Dolph
God.
did, yeah.
Jeez.
He's right.
Yep.
So you're a vampire. Then. Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah, that's it.
So actually, Dolf Guardiola does kind of sound like the name of a vampire.
Kind of does. I'm going to be honest with you.
Like a vampire name?
Yeah, it does
like
kind
you
of.
were alive in the Middle Ages and Spanish
Yep.
Inquisition and shit like that. And
Well,
That's
I wouldn't
true.
have jumped
Still
straight to
around.
Spanish Inquisition. I was
don't
thinking
know.
more, benevolent lord. But if you want to say Spanish Inquisition, I guess I wasn't trying to insult Dolph here. But you just have a really great name. Is what it comes down
Yeah.
to.
pretty good.
Yeah, and yet I found a way.
Yeah, well, when we were talking about doing this podcast in the first few episodes, he would bring you up and it's like, you have a friend named Dolph? This is somebody I have to meet. It's like,
Yeah.
wow.
Yep.
That is a very strong name, but
Yeah,
But
I'm
going back
less
to my
cool in person.
Yeah. Going back to my original point, though, I think one of the reasons, like you can't say there's one creative force in Rush, but certainly he's the guy who is maybe the dominant, lyrical voice in Rush. So whatever they meant lyrically to people, and all of the
Right,
I
yes,
sometimes
yeah.
joke on the podcast that they just write a bunch of songs about prison colonies on Mars or space pirates or whatever.
Yeah.
I know better than that. I know that's not true.
For that one album, yeah.
Yeah, but they do write a lot of stuff that's very kind of wild, like sci-fi. I mean, but sci-fi stuff, but with deeper points within it and things like that. And that's not all they did, but that, obviously like 2112
Sure, yeah.
and stuff like that.
That's
a big part of that. And that was really, correct me if I'm wrong, Neal's vision, right?
Sure. Yes, absolutely. So, yeah, I mean, I don't blame you for thinking that because 2112 being their big giant breakout hit plus the album that liberated them from having to play the music business machine game.
right. That's right.
I mean, it is sci-fi. So you're not wrong to go, well, they're a sci-fi band. Well, they did. That is how they kind of got themselves on the map is 2112.
It's really interesting that you bring that up too, Dolph, because, Rush were kind of on the fringes of trying to figure out and navigate the music business and make viable careers out of being musicians. And, they kind of had, before making 2112, had kind of just said, well, that's it. We're going to write this 2112 album and we're going to write it as this big fuck you to our record label because they're not going to re-sign us. Everybody's going to think this is just weirdo sci-fi shit. So
exactly.
Fuck it.
Yep.
And then somehow they found an audience.
Yep.
With that album,
Yeah.
which is absolutely remarkable, I think.
Yeah,
I
want to get everyone's thoughts on that because I can't explain that. And I don't mean in a mean way, but I mean that is a very challenging record for. This is like, what year did
For
that
sure.
come out? 76, 77, disco
yes,
era?
76. Yeah, 76.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how? Dolph, explain it to me. Who was it? Was it the Emerson, Lake and Palmer fans? Who was it?
No, it was the flyover states. It was those. It's those guys. It's everyone living in suburbia.
Yep.
That time period, the 70s. It was kind of a bleak time.
Yeah.
And think about it. It's the same people who came out for Star Wars a year later. Everyone relates to being that kid that's stuck out there in the middle of nowhere in some podunk town, kind of going up against the evil empire. The 2112 story is very similar. It's someone in the future living in this post-apocalyptic dystopia, and the guy finds a guitar. A guitar's music's been banned. You can only listen to the, so it's one guy who's discovered how to play a few chords on the guitar, going up against, the priests, of the
Solar
there.
Federation.
So, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I think the concept, the thought of taking on the world, or being this marginalized person in the middle of nowhere, or even in the middle of suburbia, all those kids. My friend Lance he's the other big Rush fan, and we talk about how it's the D&D crowd.
Yeah.
Dungeons and Dragons, which oddly now is like mainstream, but
Yeah,
back
it's
then,
kinda strange. Yeah.
back then it was new, and parents thought it was all demonic and
Yeah,
satanic and stuff like that. But it was just that. I think that's really why that worked. It was just the right time, that middle of the 70s, kind of thing. Malls haven't yet quite caught on yet, but that's definitely part of it. Going to the mall and you're the outsider kid, and all the other kids have all their little cliques, and you go home and play D&D. So
yeah. Well, Rush
so
was associated with nerds. I mean, and I
Absolutely.
don't mean that I just mean
bad
that as a
way.
matter of
Yeah.
fact kind of way.
Yeah.
Like it was.
I don't
mean-
take that as a negative anymore. So.
Well, yeah, no, I think that's a big part of the story, and where Rush's
Yeah.
like fortunes change later. Their reputation kind of gets, I don't want to say renovated, but that's you get what I'm saying. Like people kind of realized there was something to it. But I think back then, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Dolph, but like if you were into Rush, you were like considered a certain type of person. You know what I mean? It
Right.
wasn't
Sure,
like,
Yeah.
I mean, that was kind of true with music across the board. I mean, if you were into, the Dead Kennedys, you were a certain kind
You
of
were,
person.
punk
but,
rocker. or
Sure,
whatever,
yeah.
but I mean, for my understanding is that Rush was like kind of real, like guys who played in marching band and stuff.
Yeah.
like that would
Yeah.
be like,
Yeah.
like the band
It's
nerds would love the technical prowess of this band and the sort of high concept lyrics and stuff like that. And that was
Yeah.
part of the appeal.
I hate to use the cliche, the thinking man's band, because that kind of implies
Right.
lots of things.
I would,
But-
I could
but-
argue on that one, but yeah, sure.
Sure, yeah, exactly. That's why I'm not going to use that, but it's definitely.
And yet you
know,
did. I'm
I
just kidding,
did.
sorry.
Yeah. So the the nerd, the nerd connotation for is for sure. If you think about it, the sci-fi nerds, what music is around in the 70s for them,
Yeah.
Yeah.
punk music, sure, for some, but punk, I feel like punk music that's a different type of person too. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think so.
Well, and I also feel like, like Jethro Tull and Emerson, Lake and Palmer and like all the other prog that was kind of big.
Yeah.
I don't feel like it really communicated to kids. I think it communicated to like 30-year-old guys that read Playboy and had like really nice stereos at their house. Like
Right.
that's the kind
Yeah.
of that's the kind of music they would play for their friends and be like, look at how great the needle on my turntable is. It can get all of the layers of
Sure.
Emerson, Lake
Yeah.
and Palmer and like fucking barf, dude.
Yeah.
Careful
I'm sorry if
Dolph and I got down on some Carnival number 9 or whatever that is one
Yeah.
time.
I got a copy of Tarkus on vinyl, and I had not heard that album before. I put it on the turntable, and I was just like, "What in the fuck is this shit?" Like I couldn't do
Yeah.
it, man. And I'm sorry if I'm offending anyone, but I couldn't get down. Maybe I'm missing something. I don't know, but
I like ELP. I think it's definitely the musicianship is the appeal there for sure.
sure it is. It is. And like, I don't mean to knock
but
it,
beyond that, but it's not something that I like. It's not like a 2112 where I'm like, oh, I'm going to listen to that again right now.
Exactly. Yeah.
So there's a difference. I
Would you
don't
guys-
think it has as many relatable qualities.
Yeah, would you
Agreed.
say like if
As-
there was a prog rock spectrum, like from like accessible to least accessible, like probably Pink Floyd, if they count, would be on the far end of accessible. They're the most
sure.
accessible of the
Sure.
prog band.
Sure.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Maybe a little bit down from that is Rush. And then maybe a little bit down from that is like you get into your ELPs and then that kind of thing. Would you say
Yeah.
like that's so?
Well, yeah, you have Yes and Genesis,
Yeah,
King
yeah.
King Crimson,
yeah.
That's
Gentle
true.
Giants, all those.
But
all
I would
those
say
initial.
on that scale, Rush is kind of in the middle somewhere, wouldn't you guess? Like maybe Genesis is a little more accessible. It depends on what era you're
for
talking
sure.
about, of course. But and then like King Crimson and stuff is maybe a little less accessible. Am I wrong or
That sounds fairly on the nose, I'd say.
Yeah,
I could be wrong.
Yeah, and I think the other thing too is Rush is a little more rockin'.
Yeah.
Whereas Yes and ELP are a little more classical in, if that's a thing.
classical and just
You know,
stone
like-
cold classical and with
You know,
yes.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah, they're a little more operatic, maybe.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know?
That's, like they're
And I think-
they're like sweeping and orchestral and harmonizing. Yeah, I agree with Dolph
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, because Rush was heavily influenced by Black Sabbath and The Who.
Yeah.
And if you listen to The Who and Black Sabbath, it makes complete sense to then listen to Rush.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you listen to The Who and Black Sabbath, it doesn't make sense to then go listen to ELP right after that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's not a natural progression of of listening. So I think that's the other appeal with Rush is that their music, even though obviously they are considered a prog band, it does progress from kind of blues based to kind of a little more elaborate than blues based. But I think at the core you still have that power trio going on. You still have that. Alex is still going to hit a power chord at some point. And remind you that this is a rock band. First, and then they just happen to use 5 different time signatures.
Yeah.
But
no, and that is one of the things that was it made it possible for me to kind of appreciate them. And not that I'm only into rock music, but I certainly, if music, and I have the same beef when we talk about John Coltrane, which is sometimes I feel like jazz music can get too intellectualized to the point where I feel like it just loses me because it doesn't speak to me in my gut.
Yeah.
And and I think Rush is part of where it can speak to me is when it goes for that gut level stuff, not just dumb power chords necessarily.
Sure.
'Cause,
Right.
But I mean, like something like YYZ, where you've got this cool groove through the thing, and you can just like lock into it, and it drives, and it's really great. And that's not necessarily something you're going to do if you're only committed to being like a math rock band or something. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah, and I do want to make another point that I think the other important factor to Rush's success is that they were cool making fun of themselves.
Yeah.
They never took themselves so
Too
seriously.
Yeah.
They were never pompous or he never came off that way. So I think that's a big deal because then, fans know that, hey, they know they're a little more human.
These are accessible guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I mean, when I saw them, they had
I think
a
that
washing
helps.
machine, a row of washing machines
Yeah.
on the stage.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
exactly.
They came
Yeah,
out to
yeah.
the Three Stooges theme song, I think, didn't they?
There
Or
was
something?
a guy
They
when
may-
I think it was Snakes and Arrows. The last time I saw him, there was a guy that came out and put the clothes from the washer to the dryer
Yes,
while
yeah,
they were
yep.
playing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, and that's the thing. If you read their idea behind that was like, it doesn't matter what's behind me.
Yeah.
It's like let's just put washers out there,
Yeah, who
dryers or
cares?
whatever.
Yeah.
It's like because it's ridiculous to have a wall of amps anyway.
And let's put a guy on the payroll to go
Yes.
out to the stage while we're playing and put the washer clothes in the dryer.
Yeah.
Like
I
let's
gotta say,
make that
put
happen.
coins in it,
right,
and then
This
Yeah.
actually reminds me of a Graceworks story that, and Dolph still got this somewhere, but I think in some ways it influenced our gear because we got this crazy idea when we were
yes.
playing together to
I know what you're talking about.
build a speaker cab out of one of those old furniture TVs.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
we literally, I think
Like
it was
the wood panel
like
ones,
a wood
right?
panel
Yeah.
TV,
Yes,
right?
yeah.
So
Yeah.
we went down to the dump or something. Didn't we just throw the CRT out of an old television that Steph had or something? Or
Yeah, I was about to say. I think Steph's mom or parents were getting rid of it. They were going to throw it to the dump, and one of us had the idea. I was like, let's pull the tube out of here, and I ordered some Gorilla cloth.
Yeah.
and I put it where the screen would be, and then we built a little speaker cab, and we
stuck
it in there.
That
And then
sounds
so
cool,
we
man.
we play gigs and we'd have this TV and I'd mic up the front of the TV.
Yeah.
And that
And then a
Chris played through
Softtech
that.
head.
Yeah.
We had just the
Yeah.
Sovtek head on top of it, so this like
And
Soviet
Yeah.
amplifier that
We
looked
had
like
so
this
many people
gigantic VCR on top of this thing.
I've seen
It was
Yeah.
awesome.
Sovtek heads. Yeah.
Yeah. And then people would come up and ask us like, "Oh, what do who made that, or how, what brand is that?" It's like it's no
It's a
brand.
Guardiola
Yeah.
special, man.
Yeah,
It's-
It's Chris and Dolph.
Yeah,
go to
just-
the dumpster diving.
Yeah, exactly. But it sounded great. Like I actually,
It did, yeah.
Because that was when we really had gotten kind of into our groove as a band, and I would say that, like, to me, that's kind of the, listen to me sounding now. Now I'm sounding pompous, but like the classic period of our band as a live band was around the time we built that thing because we played
Sure,
some,
yeah.
I think some actually pretty good gigs from there on.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's one of my lost gems because of course Dolph supplied because I was broke in those days, so Dolph supplied like 90% of the material, so of course he got to keep it.
Right.
But one of these days I'll buy that off of you, Dolph. But I'm not sure that wasn't somewhat inspired by Rush. In some of those, because that was around the same
Oh,
time
yeah,
we went to see
for
them.
sure.
Where we
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
hit on that idea. So.
Yeah.
That sort of going back to that sense of humor, like I in a way that kind of influenced us in that sense, I kind of agree with you too. Think about it this way, like, Metallica, while they do have serious themes, they've got a lot of hard, especially in the early days, like just basically hard drinking songs and stuff,
Yeah.
like songs that are just songs for metalhead dudes to pump
thrash
their
metal,
fists in the air.
yeah.
Yeah. But think about this, like Metallica should be so those guys should be really fun and down to earth. And yet
Yeah.
Lars is thought of as
they're
one of the
assholes.
most
Yeah. Well,
pompous
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
ever,
Yeah.
and yet you would think
A lot of bravado. Yeah.
yeah,
Right.
exactly. And a lot of like, oh, he's real big on himself. Like that's the kind of perception. Whether that's fair or not, that's the perception of him. Rush, you would think this is the band that wrote the Trees, songs about, like
Yeah.
they will cut
Yeah,
you
yeah.
down to make you small like them. You
Yeah.
would think that these people would be pompous as shit. And that they
Yeah.
never are. They're super. We've watched the documentary. Dolph and I watched that together. What's it
Beyond the
called?
Lighted
Beyond the
Stage.
Lighted Stage.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah, I laugh so much because one of my jokes as the more skeptical side on Rush is that Rush is the main theme of Rush is using Roman numerals. Because they use
yeah.
Roman numerals in their. That's very Prague, like their classical movement. But then you watch Beyond the Lighted Stage, and they literally break it up into chapters with
yeah.
Roman numerals, and I'm
Yeah,
like,
chapter
see?
5,
See,
New
Dolph,
World
I was
Men.
right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Chapter V.
Yeah.
Yeah, chapter V.
Yeah.
But I, having said that, I mean, like you watch that video and you don't get a sense of like, oh yeah, these guys are up their own, Rush, like,
Well, that
Maybe-
goes back to
maybe
Dolph
it's because they're
saying-
Canadian. I don't know.
Yeah, and that goes back to Dolph, pointing out that they don't take themselves seriously and they're
what I mean,
kind of
yeah.
just regular guys.
Yeah.
This could be, Mike Watt has that thing about like our band could be your life. That Minutemen song where he's just like, you could be us, we could be you. We're all the same, really. And I
Yeah.
think Rush kind of embody that in a really interesting way.
except
One of
that
the
they're
only band-
virtuosos at the same time. You know what I mean?
One of the only bands that has that level of musicianship, but also communicates that kind of
Approachableness.
approach or wherewithal to their audience.
You're onto something. You
Yeah.
guys are onto something with that because one of the things that like I've always found as a turnoff about like say Led Zeppelin is that you watch footage of those guys and they always seem like like Robert Plant walks in the room and it's just like, hey, I'm the sexiest man who ever walked, and I'm gonna take your girlfriend. Like that's
Yeah.
what it looks like, and it's just like get off the stage. Like literally, this guy thinks he's like from Mount Olympus.
Yeah.
And like
Right.
Getty, Neil, Alex, they never came across that
Yeah.
way. They're just
I mean, like-
seem like people really into
Like
the music.
Marty said, or what have you were saying? Their walk on music was the theme to the Three Stooges.
Yeah,
The Three Blind Mice. Thing. So
Yeah.
I mean they're already making fun of themselves, going, "Hey, yeah, we're Three Stooges are about to play in front of you." So
Yeah.
Right.
And
You
then
know,
they play
I think-
like incredibly complex things in
Right.
13/8 time or whatever. And it's like, okay.
Right, yeah.
I don't think Curly
Exactly.
and Moe could have pulled that off. Larry playing
exactly.
the bass pedals from an organ, or
Yeah.
whatever. Yeah.
Moog Taurus.
Yeah.
Oberheim
Yeah.
synthesizer.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think they also kind of were, I think because of the whole 2112, like them doing that record going, this is probably our last record. I feel like maybe after that, they always had that in the back of their mind. Every record they made, it's like, this could be the last one.
Yeah. yeah.
So let's do everything we want to do on this record.
One of the things that Neal actually said in that documentary was, at some point we became kind of insurmountable in that, we handed our record label a finished album and they put it out because we were Rush and we can do it. We have afforded that of ourselves because of what we have accomplished. Like we push the record label. It should be the other way around. The record label should push around the artist and make sure they're making music that's scalable to an audience and that can sell and move units and all this shit. They came to a point where they were like, no, we're in control here. We're Rush. Like, have you heard 2112? Well, great. So you're putting this fucking record out and it's going to be great. And that's that. And,
but that also speaks to just the economic power of their cult.
Exactly.
And I don't mean cult
brand
again.
loyalty. Yeah.
I was going to say that. I was going to say that they were able to get away with the records because their fans were they were signed on too.
Yeah.
They were like, we're going to buy your next record no matter what you play, and I think they were always good about thanking the fans and going, thanks for letting us put this record out that's about a black hole.
Yeah.
In space. Thank you for buying that. Thank you for coming to the tour. Who knows what the next record will be, kind of thing. And I think the fact that they were always really, really good at thanking the fans for letting them kind of be indulgent in that way,
Yeah.
So
and the fans love them the more for it, I think.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I think
like
so.
they were looking for that major statement.
Well,
or whatever.
there's an honesty there,
I dare say they were alternative to
Well, I mean, in some ways,
anything else that was on the radio at that time.
Sure.
I mean, in some ways, that's true. I wouldn't entirely argue. I mean, it's hard rock. There are aspects of it that were mainstream, but
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, but I think ultimately, once you get into the Rush cult, the fandom, I think it's absolutely its own subculture at a certain point. I mean, I was amazed when we went to see. So this is a great story. Like Dolf, of course, had been talking about Rush for a long time, and he and I grew to be good friends in the band, and they were playing in Houston. And Dolf was like, "Hey, I got you tickets to go see Rush in Houston." To begin with, those of you who aren't in Texas or who don't know where Leveland is, imagine pretty much the opposite side of the state from Houston.
Yeah.
Pretty much. So, and he's like, let's drive down. We got somewhere we're going to meet in Dallas. So we didn't even go straight to Houston. We went to Dallas first. And then from Dallas down to Houston, and then we'll drive back, and it'll be fun. It'll be just a road trip. And I was like, okay, sure, man. I'll go see Rush. Like I wasn't that big of an asshole that I was just going to turn that down. And so, and the whole way it was like Dolf. You knew the set list already, so you knew they were going to be playing By Tor and the Snow Dog and stuff like that.
Oh, so you had already seen him on this same tour, Dolf?
No, man, he had the internet. It was all right. We're not that old,
Set List. What was the Set List website? Setlist.fm or whatever.
Still out there, yeah.
Jam Base,
still there.
Yeah,
still there.
That's so crazy. By Tor and the Snow Dog. Wow.
Yes.
So there's all this stuff. Like I don't know much about Rush, and I got like an education on it during that road trip, and it was fun. Like I really enjoyed it. Being like, okay, let's hear some Presto. What the hell is Presto? Got a bunch of rabbits on the cover.
Yeah.
Let's listen to the Pass.
Right. Yeah.
But that was I don't know. I mean, I don't know how much you recall from that trip, Dolf, but that was my kind of intro to Rush, and I enjoyed it. That was really fun.
Yeah, I remember the trip. I remember. I think I had. Was that had to have been pre-iPod days?
Yeah.
So I probably had
burned CD.
Burned a CD.
Yes,
Yeah,
burned
for sure.
CDs of the songs in the set list order. That's how big of a nerd I am.
Yeah.
And,
I've done that shit too.
then
You're talking to a guy who made a Spotify playlist of the Death Cab for Cutie set when I saw him back in 2015. Like all the songs. I just did it.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
So I totally get that, Dolph. We're like-minded.
Sorry. You think I'm like, no, I'm too cool for that, guys. I just listen to ESPN radio. What are you talking about? The set list of bands? What? Do I look like a teenage girl?
Album of the Year podcast.
That's better. That'll last you one episode.
There's a new merch idea, Chris.
No, you don't need a set list. You just do one episode. Will get you from Leveland to Houston. That's all I'm saying.
Chris, that's our next bumper sticker. Just some asshole that listens to Album of the Year podcast.
Yeah.
We got to send you a sticker, Dolph. We actually have some pretty cool.
Yeah, please
cool
do.
looking
They're
stickers,
very
so-
cool.
Yeah.
But-
Yeah. I'll put it on my door. I'll put it on my door of my office. And
Yeah, that'd be
Oh,
cool.
sweet. There we go.
So the kids, I can go, hey, go listen to this.
I'm on an episode.
That'd be
Okay,
awesome.
Oh, the point that I was going to make. Let me just wrap.
Yeah, go ahead.
That I was amazed by how big the audience was. Like,
Right.
it's not that I didn't think Rush was a big band, but they're not Aerosmith. Like, there were bands
Yeah.
out there that you heard on the radio, even classic rock bands in those days who still had hits every now and then, and
Right.
stuff. And if you had told me, okay, yeah, we're going to go see. Aerosmith's the only one that comes to mind actually, but we're going to go see a band like that. Like, I would have pictured the size of that crowd that came to see Rush, or we're going to go see Pearl Jam. Yeah, sure. Fine. They're going to sell this place out. But it blew my mind because to me, Rush seemed like a cult. And yet if it is a cult, it's the biggest one, like as far as a cult act, because it was huge.
Yeah.
It was massive.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
here's the approximation you can make that I think kind of dovetails on the point you just made, Chris. Rush, until they stopped touring, right? In 2015, when Neal Peart actually retired, they stopped touring. They were playing arenas and amphitheaters. They were still playing large venues to thousands of fans. Foreigner, Styx, whoever, they're playing fucking church festivals, man. Nobody gives a shit about Jukebox Hero. Nobody wants to hear that song anymore. People want to hear Rush. People are lining up to get tickets, buying When I saw them on Vapor Trails tour,
Which was the tour we saw.
Riverbend
the first
Music
one.
Center.
That's the tour we saw with Chris,
Southern Ohio. There was a guy. It was 97 degrees outside. There was a guy in a Toronto Maple Leafs jersey, Toronto Maple Leafs jersey. On the back of the Maple Leafs jersey, Lee Lifeson Peart 2112.
Nice.
Saw it with my own eyes.
Nice.
Offered to buy the jersey from him, but he shut me down.
That would be cool.
It's sort of Rush
It was really
and
cool.
Insane Clown Posse. It's crazy. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's quite remarkable for a band like this to strike that much of a chord and find an audience just kind of almost on a fluke.
Yeah.
And things. I don't know if things happen like that
They're very
anymore.
prolific too. I mean,
Yeah,
they had an album almost out every year, from 74 to 94.
Yeah.
So it's like that's the thing too. I mean, you mentioned Styx or Foreigner, a lot of times those bands are touring with each other.
Right.
Just so they have enough material to fill in the 3 hours.
Exactly.
Rush has, however many albums. They have plenty. They have more
plenty
than
of music. Yeah.
the hard thing is picking what to. It's like obviously you got to play Tom Sawyer, but beyond that, and I think that's maybe the other thing. There's different phases of Rush. There's 70s sci-fi D&D Rush. There's 80s new wave Rush.
So that brings up an interesting point that I also wanted to make, Dolph. And Rush went through a lot of different incarnations sonically and musically. But it never felt like they were trying to sell out or they were trying to go for a sound that was maybe beyond them or above them or anything like that. They always still sounded like Rush, even if they had, even if Geddy Lee was playing 18 synthesizers with his right foot, it didn't matter. You still knew it was them. And I think that's really cool. In a lot of cases, bands will try and change and adapt with the times and the results will be really awful. And I meet Rush fans all the time, and a lot of them have different eras that they like better. I've met people that are like, no, Hold Your Fire. That's the best. Power Windows, best Rush album. Like, okay, wow, that's great, man. What am I missing? Maybe, So So that's another thing that's kind of unheard of. I feel like it doesn't happen anymore. They really kind of they did change with the times, but they did it in a way that was endearing and respectful to what their band identity was,
Right.
So.
Yeah. I agree. And I think that's the problem with those bands like Styx and Foreigner, where they try to recreate those 2 or 3 records, after that, and they just didn't have the magic, because they're not, that was the thing. I think Rush kind of tried to reinvent themselves, but more as just their own, through their own natural evolution of, wanting to, let's try this, let's try that, and then, but ultimately, like you said, it's always at the core, there's that Rush vibe, that Rush sound.
I think it was in the documentary when they were being interviewed. This was in the 70s, I think before Permanent Waves. And the interviewer was asking Geddy Lee, like, what are you listening to? What's influencing you? And he was like, Talking Heads, The Police, Ultravox, that kind of thing.
Yeah, they were into all the
new
wave stuff. Yeah,
like, and that's the spirit of radio is kind of a direct link to that. So I think that's cool.
I was gonna say, I think that they were really good about listening to what was going on around them.
Yeah,
and kind of trying to incorporate some of that, not to pander, but just to go, hey, I think that's pretty cool. Let's see if we can do our version of that.
Right.
And without, like I said, without making it sound like they were trying to be somebody else. I think they liked the Police. So Neal Peart's now going to play more splash cymbal, as an homage to Stuart Copeland, or they're going to try their version of reggae, kind of thing. So, which is their Signals record. If you listen to Signals,
sure.
But anyway, I think
I listened to that "Losing It" song that you recommended. I dug it for sure.
Yeah. That's a they'd never played that song ever live until their last tour. Which is
I can see
Time Machine tour.
No, the R40.
R40. Man, yeah. I can't believe I didn't go to that show. I don't know what I was thinking.
I didn't go either. I did. So confession time. Okay.
Yeah.
Confession time. And my buddy Lance and I, we both kick ourselves now. But so Clockwork Angels tour.
Yeah. Yeah.
They went out on the road with a little mini orchestra. They had a little string section.
Yeah.
And selfish, cynical old Dolph said, man,
this is bullshit.
This is bullshit. I'm not going to go see Rush with an orchestra.
Right. I didn't know that. That's crazy.
So they did that. And then the next tour was R40. Right. So I was kind of like, well, I didn't see them. And I didn't realize that was going to be their last tour.
Yeah.
Had I known that, I would have been there.
I knew it was their last tour, but I had just heard
Geddy called me.
I should have. Well, and here's the thing. I knew it was their last tour because I had read about it, and Geddy Lee was like, Neal just can't do it physically anymore. He can't. Basically, what he said was like, he cannot tour. He can't do. We might play one-off dates here or there. So I was like, look, I'm not going to go to R40, but hey, maybe if they play in LA, or maybe they'll even come to Houston or something for a one-night stand, and I'll go to that. Yep. And then that's not going to happen anymore.
Yeah,
it's just
this past Christmas, I went up to visit my friend Lance, and I actually took the R40 DVD so we could watch it. And we were talking about it because I'd seen, they released in I think August.
Yeah,
they released Cinema Strangiato, which was like a short version of the R40, and it was in the movie theater, and went to see it.
There was
when I
R40.
saw that, I was like, oh my god, I should have gone to this tour.
Yeah.
So then I bought the R40 DVD, and like I said, we watched it, and we were Christmas, we were going, well, hopefully maybe they'll do a one-off and we'll get to see them again.
Did you see Time Stands Still?
I have not.
The documentary about that. Oh, it's so good.
No, I haven't seen that. I need to see that. Yeah.
That's the documentary they made about that tour, and it's absolutely incredible. Yeah. So,
yeah.
Very, very good.
It was I think on that song we were going back to Losing It, that song is written about a dancer, you guess a ballet dancer or some who's kind of gotten old and can no longer, perform to the level that they used to perform. And that's what that song's about. So very poignant that they had never played it until the R40 tour.
Yeah. So,
so
right when they're getting to that point in their own
when
careers,
they're there, where it's definitely very relevant to them at that point. So
too, you were talking, and I'm sure. I mean, we'll talk a little bit more about Neal's the last few years with Neal, but I wanted to get at something. You sent me an interview a couple days ago with Neal, and I did get a chance to watch some of it. And one of the things that he said in there, and keep in mind, everybody, that I'm of the people in the room, I'm the least bought in on Rush, But one of the things that he said that impressed me, because I'm like, that is definitely true. So he said there's never like a Rush show where they didn't go out to just really give 110%
Right.
when they played.
Yeah.
Like they never phoned it in. They never got to a phase where they were just like, yeah, this is just a
Right.
gig. This is just a money thing or whatever,
Yeah.
And I think, to be honest with you, part of it, I mean, to begin with, that's super endearing because I think it's true. Every time I've
Yeah.
seen them talk about the band, every time I've seen a live performance of it, I mean, in a way, the music is so complex that you can't just half-ass it. You know what I mean? You can't just
Yeah.
go out and be like,
Sure.
okay,
Yeah.
we're the Black Crows. Let's play, Hard to
Yeah.
Handle for the 10,000th freaking time. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it's going to be like, okay, you can't just like, I don't care how many times you played it. You're not going to like just half-ass Cygnus or something like that. If you,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like you've
Yeah.
got to,
Or Tom Sawyer, yeah.
or even Tom Sawyer.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's too.
Yeah.
There's too much going on, to do that. But I don't think it was really in their character to do that either.
Right.
But that was one of the things that I thought was super, impressed me because I was like, yeah, he's 100% right, But maybe that's part of it too, not just from a physical standpoint. Maybe they were getting to the point where it was like, hey, like we've been doing this now for 40 years and giving it our all every night. How much
Yeah.
longer can we keep doing
Doing it,
that?
yeah.
And if we can't
Right.
keep doing that, then maybe it's time to say, we
Yeah.
gave it our best.
Yeah.
And that's a
Yeah.
really fair kind of conclusion to draw. That's a really that's something that's very fair to yourself and fair to your fans to say, hey, look, guys, like we're old and we don't want to go out there and half-ass it. We don't want to go out there
Yeah.
and play 8 songs
Yeah.
and not give you your money's worth or whatever because we're
Right.
Rush and we know you want to see us play for 2.5 hours and play all the hits and
Yeah.
start YYZ at the beginning of the end of the first set and then finish it up in the encore, which I saw them do, and it was absolutely
Yeah.
fucking
Yeah.
incredible. So
Yeah.
good. Anyway,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean it's a really really kind of impactful thing for the community of just musicians as a whole. I mean, which is
Yeah.
obviously a huge community of people.
While we were recording this, the Grammys were last night, and I didn't get a chance to see them. Did they mention
They
Neal?
did. They
Yeah.
did.
They did, yeah. In the in memoriam, they
Yeah.
they had a little clip of him. I mean, it was just he was one of many, obviously.
Right.
So, yeah,
I'm kind of surprised they didn't do more. I mean, I know
yeah, I was too. Yeah,
because
Yeah.
one part of it, we kind of hinted at this, but Rush's reputation has kind of been revitalized over the last 15 years or so, I would say.
yeah.
I would say
once
so.
once the nerds came to power,
Yeah, I know. I mean, I don't even think that's a joke. I think that's probably kind of
Yeah.
true.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
the kind
I mean,
of audience that they represented are.
when they showed up on the Colbert Report,
Oh,
that's when
my
you-
God,
that's when,
yeah.
that's when you knew they're in.
That
You
was
know,
their
it's
that
like-
was their first appearance ever on American television. Did you know that?
Yeah,
Really?
Yeah,
Yeah.
What?
Honest
Yep.
to God. Yeah.
yeah.
Stephen Colbert even says that.
Oh my
Yeah.
On
god!
American, now they've been Canadian television. They've been on Canadian
Yeah, sure.
television
No, of
since
course.
like the 20s,
Yeah.
but
But
no,
I mean,
that was
on
their first
not even
no
freaking MTV or
SNL. Well, I mean, live
Oh, no.
appearance of just them.
Live-
Yeah.
yeah.
Videos, sure, but
But not to be interviewed or anything
exactly,
like that.
yeah. Like,
Yeah.
so never on SNL.
Really,
never
no Yo
on-
MTV raps that Bill Bellamy didn't show up and ask them.
Yo, Geddy Lee, what's up, man? Why don't you
Yeah.
tell me about that bass?
Yeah. So
No,
yeah,
that
so
never
let's think
happened.
about this.
Thankfully.
So let's think about this. Yeah, so think about it. Let's see. Rush on Yo MTV Raps. Nope. Rush on Headbangers Ball.
Nope, definitely not.
Rush on Alternative Nation. Nope.
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 120
120
minutes.
Nope.
That didn't happen.
No.
Nope. TRL,
Meanwhile,
guys.
yeah.
TRL right
Yeah.
there. It's, hey, everybody.
yeah.
It's
And
what's
that's
the
just-
guy's name? Carson Daly.
Carson Daly.
Hey,
Well-
guys, Carson Daly. We got a video from Britney Spears. And, oh, yeah, Rush with
Yeah.
Test for Echo.
Yeah.
That
And
didn't
it's,
happen.
and it's funny because yeah, while all that's going on, they're filling up arenas.
Yeah, a massive arena.
In Europe, in the States, so it's
Wherever.
like, yeah, the biggest band nobody talked about.
Yeah. No, it's true. I mean, it was
At
almost.
least on TV, at least
Yeah.
music TV.
Yeah.
And probably they benefited a lot from the internet age too, just because it's
Yeah,
like
probably.
here's something that it's huge that's going on, but it's kind of media blackout in the old media or whatever. But there's plenty of places to talk about them and stuff like that. Like I haven't looked it up, but I imagine that all their videos on YouTube have probably gotten millions of hits more than their contemporaries.
So
in that scene.
I guarantee you, someone back in like the mid '90s, like I'm just imagining in my head a fucking shitty HTML1 Angel Fire website dedicated to 2112 and like, this is Brian and this is why I love Rush and 2112 and
we got to find there's
Temples
got to be
of
a
Syrinx
Rush Usenet.
There was a 2112.net for a long time.
Of course, yeah.
2112.net.
Sure
And at the risk of showing my real age, revealing my real age, there, I don't know if y'all remember the Usenets, the way back in the early 90s, so 90, 91. I was at A&M and we'd get online, we'd get on the VAX, and you could connect to these use.net or Usenet, whatever those were. Those the bulletin boards, remember that kind of stuff?
The days of Prodigy and CompuServe.
You'd find the Rush one, and that's how my friend Ronnie and I actually found out Rush was playing in Dallas when we were at A&M.
Wow.
And that was my first, I saw Roll the Bones. That was the first tour I saw in Dallas, and that was 91, spring of 91.
Because of the Usenet group.
Yeah, so we actually saw Metallica on their Black Album tour that same spring, and Van Halen on their
For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge.
I
remember that year.
So those three concerts, those three pretty big bands at the time, you know. So Metallica's still around, and but and Rush was still earlier this month. So
crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
yeah, for sure. I think Rush fans have definitely had an internet presence since there was an internet. Since they were bulletin boards.
Yeah,
it
and that
makes
kind
sense.
of
A bunch of
stuff.
sci-fi geeks, would have Usenet groups and stuff. Of course they would.
Well, what do you think the IT guy's listening to when he's got the late night shift? Backing up the server.
Onto cassette
he's
tapes
got
and
Farewell
stuff.
to Kings spinning in the background.
He's got Caress of Steel going, man.
Yeah.
So, are you familiar with that show, Chuck, Dolph?
Chuck Dolph?
No, the show is named Chuck, but your name is Dolph.
Okay, yeah.
So it was. I had not seen it, but a buddy of mine pointed out to me there's an episode where I think Chuck was this kind of detective kind of guy or something. And
yeah.
He was trying to crack this case. There was this thing going on at a shopping mall, and he turned to his buddy and he was like, "Wait, do you have any Rush albums right now?" And this guy goes, "I got them all on my Zune." and then 5 seconds pass and he goes, "I'm just kidding. I have them all on my iPod. Here you go." Got everyone on my Zune.
Yeah.
Do you have
Whatever
moving
happened to
pictures?
Zune?
You can buy one on Amazon for I think somebody's retrofitting them nowadays. I don't know, but
we got to get that.
there's
there's
a shit brown one that Chris is obsessed with.
Yeah, my buddy had at work. He got a Zune. His parents bought him one, and it was in the age when iPods were all stark white, and that was just a sign of this sleekness. He walks in with a shit brown Zune with a strange green avocado lacquer on it. It just was it was the MP3 player that the 70s forgot or something. I don't know. It was so bizarre.
It was very bizarre.
But so
that's fun. They probably have Zune Classic now, right?
Probably. They should bring the Zune back. It's funny.
Yeah. Well, in 10 more years, there'll be iPods. iPod will get rebooted. The Zune will get rebooted. Somehow, MP3 players are going to make a comeback. And they'll all have Spotify and Apple Music built into them and shit. Yeah. It's going to happen. We can't get enough of ourselves, guys.
Well, if anybody in the future is listening to this podcast on your Zune Classic, well, we called it. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, we called it.
You owe us royalties, Microsoft. Yeah. It was our fucking idea first.
We started it off. We should kind of. And if there's anything else you want to say, Dolph, go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I do want to bring up something about probably the biggest event for Neal. Was they toured through 94 on the Test for Echo tour, and then I want to say 96 or 7 or 8 was when that was when his only daughter
Yeah.
Was killed in a car wreck.
That's
and
right.
then about a year later, his wife died of cancer.
Yep.
So that's what kept them from touring until the Vapor Trails tour in
Yep.
early 2002, I think.
2002, yeah.
Yeah,
2002,
so they were
2003.
So they were out, for 5 or 6 or 7 years. They had a hiatus because they were waiting for him to decide whether he wanted to do the Rush thing.
Yeah.
At
At his daughter's funeral, he basically told Alex and Getty, like, just consider me retired. And they were like, that's cool,
Right.
man. We got your whatever you want to do, like.
Yeah.
Because I actually did read the book Ghost Rider that he wrote while he was
Fantastic book,
great
by
book,
the way.
beautifully written, believe it or not.
And this is a good chance to mention that he has written quite a few books.
Yeah, he has. Yeah,
And Ghost Rider I've read. It's phenomenal.
it's very good.
Traveling music is really good. I didn't read what the last one he did. I haven't read that one.
No, I've only read Ghost Rider. I knew he had other books, but
Yeah.
I hadn't read any of the other ones.
Yeah, he's the one before Ghost Rider is it's something Rider, Masked Rider.
Yeah.
Masked Rider, and that's him cycling, not
Right.
motorcyclist,
Yeah.
bicycling.
In like
So-
Africa or something, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so he was not only did he write lyrics, but he did he is an author of books.
Yeah, he is.
And but yeah, that whole event, losing his daughter, basically losing his family.
yeah.
He lost his only kid and his wife within a year. And that them kind of took them coming back. In 2002, the Russian Rio, DVD that kind of, I think they came back with renewed spirit, and I think the fans, everyone knew what was going on, and they were just,
Right.
I think that definitely, I would say, helped, kind of elevate them, in mainstream. I think in a way, I think because it was somewhat of a comeback story from a tragic events, and plus the fact that Neal is definitely the most private of the three.
He is, yeah.
So the most private, yet he's the guy that writes the words, So
Yeah.
you get a glimpse into who he is if you go and read the lyrics, of his songs, and of course those books. You get the, obviously, he's still guarded and all that, but
Right.
that's the, I think that's one of the reasons I think he was such a big hero to me. Beyond the drumming, beyond
Sure.
the musicianship, it was just that he was very well read. He liked to write. He wrote a lot of short stories before he wrote a book.
Right.
So he kind of in a way earned his place as an author, I think.
Yeah, totally.
And that Ghost Rider book is really good. It's a very
It's kind of like a travelogue, like a personal journal in a way. Is that right, or is it?
Yeah,
kind of.
After his wife and kid died, he basically got on his bike and
just went.
rode all the way down to South America, from Canada all the way down. And just that whole, and just the reflection, and just him convincing himself, that he can live another day. He can he can get through this, and then got to the point where he lived enough days that then he could figure it out. He could I can come back to this.
Good.
I can
and
come back.
He tells stories about his past too. He talks about some of his friends in it too. And it's like one of his good friends got busted for drugs or something.
Yes.
It's
Brutus.
Brutus. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like a guy that he met because his wife was friends with her wife with their wives were friends, and they became friends based on that. And then and they met on tour and stuff, and he wound up going to jail for drugs, and all this is nuts. But really cool stories.
Actually, you kind of hit on something a second ago, Dolph, that I want to circle back to, because it would be pointless not to. It's, as a drummer, and as a very accomplished drummer, I've got to say, what does Neal mean to you? From a playing standpoint, as an inspiration as a player, what did he mean to you?
I think for me, he was a very compositional drummer. You usually think of, if I'm playing with most any other bands, I guess, you get the idea. If you listen to records or if you watch most bands, the drummer doesn't play exactly what he played on the record. He plays something close to it.
Right.
Because the actual where he's hitting everything, is not a big part of it. Whereas with Neal, it's like when you listen to his drum parts, you can tell, like, okay, he's hitting these toms in this order.
Right.
And when you go see the show, he's going to hit those toms and that he's going to do that drum fill exactly. And every tour that he plays that song, he's going to do it. Because his drum parts were composed. They're not just, he's not just, ad-libbing or improvising the whole time. And to me, that was, Chris, you were there with when we did our, when we recorded Graceworks stuff, my drum parts, like when I'm working with original music, if I'm the first guy to drum on this song, I like to think, I like to channel little Neal Peart and go, okay, how, I want to compose this. What makes musical sense, and yet what can I also do to make sure I'm challenged when I play this, but I'm also having fun when I'm playing it, Yeah. And then, so that then when we go and play this out live, then I want to play that part again, because I composed that part, I composed the drum part. I didn't write the melody, I didn't write the lyrics, but I did write the drum part. And I think that was the thing that I learned and got and was inspired, from Neal Peart, that his drum parts were very compositional. And, you don't usually, in mainstream music, you don't think about that. Of course, in mainstream music's different now, but when looking back to when I started drumming in the era. 80s and 90s, think of Pearl Jam, the if it's Dave or Matt, whichever
Cameron,
drummers. Yeah, it's
David Bruce.
You listen to the drum parts, he's not playing exactly every time the exact same thing. I mean, he's going to be in the ballpark, and that's fine. That's just the way that drumming is. That does not make the music any less or any better. It's just that's not an important component to the song, to the music. But you listen to Rush, you listen to a Rush song, what Neal played, then becomes essential for then on forever. If you're going to play a Rush song, you have to play Neal's part.
Well,
because it's like singing. It's like Geddy sing. You got to sing Geddy's melody, or you got to play Alex's
guitar
chords or solo. It's like, because that's part of it. That's
I want to back
the
you
challenge
up on that. Just to say that having played with Dolf for several years, that's 100% true, and it's a part of the way we would even talk about songs. Like Steph would bring a song in and be like, okay, here's the song, here's the context of the song. And there would be, discussions, well, how do we want to approach this? And of course, Steph is super into drums too. I swear half of recording Graceworks albums was trying to figure out what we do with drums. But I mean, no joke. But there were times where I was laying laying on the couch waiting for them to just EQ the hell out of a cymbal or something. It would just be madness. But in a way, great. I remember just maybe some ghost notes here, or maybe some, there would be all these discussions about it, and this kind of compositional approach to how you wrote drums. And honestly, it influenced me as a guitarist too, because it was because I came out of the school of punk rock, and it was it was about immediacy. It was about making an energetic noise that you felt. Whether or not it sounded good was secondary. It was that whether or not you felt it was what mattered. So it was kind of the opposite view. It was kind of an art brute thing of rawness, sort of an anti-compositional thing. And honestly, I came out of an era where you had a chip on your shoulder about it. We were, it was we were real music, or whatever, and all that other stuff was just wankery. That was our kind of attitude. And what I did appreciate about that was, and not to make this a love letter to Dolf, for God's sake, but I just mean it's interesting to see how, Neal has that approach you adopt that approach, and then it ends up even going outside of the drums and influencing the way I approach to putting guitar parts together. And I think that's a big part of our second album for sure, was a lot more conceptual stuff about like, well, what could we do with the guitars here and things like that. So
yeah.
So
it's just in that interview that I sent to you at the very beginning, he mentions he always wants to know he wants the fans. He wants to make sure that the fans know that great care was taken with every aspect of the music. The lyrics, the drumming, the bass playing, guitars, or whatever. And that's that. It was thought about. Was it just kind of now that being said, one of the things about Neal, because here's the other thing that's great about Neal. Back in the mid '90s, he felt like his playing got stiff. If you watch that, the rest of that interview, he talks about he took drum lessons from Freddie Gruber, who was kind of Buddy Rich's buddy, so he learned, he went to a drum master. Went to a drum teacher and said, hey, what can I do?
Like, how can I get better is basically his thing, which was crazy.
And then in the 2000s or late 2000s, early teens, he went study with Peter Erskine. Same thing, kind of, it's like, hey, he was trying to, after all these decades of being a compositional drummer, he wanted to compose sections where he could be improvisational, because he was like, now that I've got that down after 40 years, now that I'm good at composing drum parts, now I want to be able to have parts in songs where I am improving. It is spur of the moment, it's like, and he went to someone to learn how to do that, which sounds funny. How do you learn to improv? But there is a skill and an art to that as well. So just, speaks to to just how a monster musician he was and how serious he took his craft and
how much he was a lifer as a musician first. You know what I mean?
Right.
That here he is toward the end of his career. And I mean, ignoring what happened this last couple of weeks, I mean, clearly by that point he could just coast, and instead of doing that, like, he was interested in developing the actual chops, beyond,
Well, he lived under the I guess idea that you're never going to be good enough. You can always get better, and if I'm here and I can play the drums, then I should be doing something that makes me better, even if people think I'm the best drummer in the world. I can still get better. There is still a plateau that I haven't reached yet, and that's incredible. That's where greatness comes from. That's how walls get broken down and stuff. When when no one else thinks you can get any better and you do, like that's amazing. And I also wanted to say, another thing about Neal's, I want to back up what you guys have been saying also. And another thing about Neal's playing is it's almost like it's a lead instrument. I mean, in most forms of music, drums are seen as accompaniment, like something that keeps the beat, something that's rhythm based, and it's kind of in the service of the melody or the kind of flashier, fancier parts of the song. With Rush and with Neal Peart in particular, his drums not only are and can be seen as a lead instrument, but it's almost like they tell a story. Especially when you're listening to some of his heavier compositions. It's incredible. So it's not something most musicians can pull off on their own. So
I agree completely with that. I think when you've got Geddy Lee over there playing lead bass, all of a sudden it's like everyone's playing lead but Alex, and he gets a solo every once in a while.
right.
So I think maybe that was why maybe somewhere in the back of their mind they realized they might be Spinal Tap. They're like, it might be us. You're playing lead bass, I'm playing lead drums.
David St. Hubbins, lead bass.
yeah. So I agree. I think I definitely think that his monster musicianship. I think Geddy also. And Alex. I always tell people he's the most underrated guitarist
Sure.
Because he's standing next to Neal and Geddy the whole time.
Yeah.
You know?
And keeping up with them, you know.
Yeah.
And,
You know, and filling all those, making them sound like they're more than 3 people, you
Right.
know, and so it's like I think one day there will be a master class on Alex Lifeson's guitar parts.
So the solo, and I know we're talking about Neal, but I just wanted to bring
Sure.
up La Villa Strangiato. That solo in La Villa Strangiato is quite possibly one of my favorite guitar solos of all time. It's so just evocative and emotional and you know, all encompassing. It's absolutely incredible. Like I don't know how he does. I can't understand how he does it, most of it. But it's so good.
Yeah, that's a classic. I think definitely the guitar solo in Limelight.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I could list a ton of Alex Lifeson guitar solos.
Sure.
And one of the cool things about him is that a lot of those solos, you know, he floats out of time, as in like, you know, the band's keeping time and they're playing something and you feel the beat, but his solo is kind of like, I'm gonna hold this note out till I feel it, and if it happens to be 3.5 beats long, so be it. I'll play the next note, you know. And somehow he gets out of that solo to where he's in time and in the right spot.
I was going to say,
you know?
he always joins back up with the band no matter what, you know.
You know, at the college where I teach, I talk to the guitar instructors all the time and about Alex, and that's one thing they say. They're like, yeah, his solos are hard to learn because they're not timed.
Yeah.
He kind of just he's playing these, you just have to feel it every time.
Right.
You know, and it's like, you have to know it or you don't, you know, and that's kind of the cool thing about Alex is that he is the lesser of the 3, and yet he's hanging with them the whole time.
Sure. Yeah.
You know, so
I'm thinking how funny it is that like Alex Lifeson is like the Ringo Starr of Rush, and yet he's one of the most accomplished,
still fantastic,
musicians ever. You know?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I like the documentary where Geddy and Alex are sitting in that cafe, and the lady comes over and wants Geddy's autograph.
Yeah.
And then he's like, do you want his? And she's like, nah. And Alex just kind of laughs about it. You know, he takes it in a stride. It's like, it's cool. You know, and I'm like, oh man, it's like, it's Alex. It's like, why wouldn't you want his autograph?
Well, he's also got like one of those, I mean, and I don't mean this in a mean way, but like generic faces where it's like, he could just walk into the room, and I've seen him 100 times, and I would probably not recognize
I would
him.
probably walk by him, and then 5 minutes later, I'd be like, shit, that was Alex Lifeson.
Yeah. Whereas Geddy
Lee, it's him.
Yeah.
Skinny, long-haired guy, you know,
Jewish
very
nose.
Recognizable facial hair, you know.
So. Neal, I would recognize by the hat.
Yeah.
That would be the only way I would
of
know
course.
Neal.
Yeah.
So just to kind of, obviously we've talked about what happened. So he had brain cancer. And correct me if I'm wrong. Did the fan base know about this?
Same thing that killed Buddy Rich.
Really?
Incidentally, yeah. Buddy Rich died from the same thing.
Oh wow,
so,
that's insane.
So from what I've seen, I think a lot of drummer friends knew. Yeah. But they were all held to secrecy. So
he was a private guy.
Drummer friends, a lot of his drummer friends, once he passed away, they're like, oh, I knew about this, 2 years ago, but I was asked not to say anything.
Right.
Yeah. You know, and kudos to all those guys for not, that's how much love they had and respect they had for Neal. That, and that speaks volumes too. That these guys could easily have gone to, I don't know, TMZ or whatever.
They could have gone to some website and been like, Neal Peart's dying of cancer, just so you know.
Yeah.
Nope.
Nope. They all kept it under wraps. So, so it was quite a shock. I mean, I think everyone was like, "What?" So.
Yeah.
And he's definitely, he's the brainy guy, and for it to be brain cancer, it's just
crazy.
This is such a horrible irony, So.
Yeah. It was definitely sad. I even for me, because I do have a great respect for him in many ways as a musician and so many different other ways. But the way I found out is Katie texted me, and she just wrote, "You better call Dolf." And I was like, yeah, of course I freaked out because of course me and Dolf, like, we know a lot of people the same. And so I don't immediately think what musician has died. I think other things. And I'm like, oh my God. And I like go to the Facebook and everything. And I'm like, oh, Neal died. And then it was like, I hate to say I was relieved, but I mean, it was horrible, but it was also I'm glad,
It wasn't somebody we personally knew.
Yeah, exactly. But it was just kind of like, that was the weird way that I found out. But yeah, I had a sense that nobody knew about it. Like I knew that they had stopped touring, but I didn't know if it had ever come out.
No, apparently, no.
Yeah.
No, I think everybody was stunned. Everybody that didn't know, which was everybody, but a few drummers and a few of his friends, I think everybody was stunned.
Yeah.
I texted my sister the Pitchfork article, and I just put "I am crushed" in all caps, and she just texted me back the word "no."
Yeah.
And then she texted me back, "I'm devastated." And I was like, "Yeah, pretty much, man."
It was a bummer. I listened to Cygnus. That's probably my favorite.
That's your jam.
That's probably my favorite
Cygnus
Rush
X1
track. I loved that live and everything, and it's got that. I mean, talking about Alex bashing out some power chords and stuff in that section, and it's So that's one of my favorites, and I was like, all right, Neal, thanks for the music. So
So I was okay the whole weekend. I was I was bummed and was listening to a lot of Rush that weekend. But I think the Tuesday after, I was finally brave enough to go on YouTube and just I did Neal Peart tribute, search on in YouTube. And,
I haven't done that.
And it's funny, we were making fun of bands like Styx, but the Styx,
they loved Rush. Yeah,
the Styx tribute. It was just the keyboard player, the singer, and he started playing Limelight. He played the chords, and then he sang a verse and a chorus, and of course immediately the audience knew, and that was kind of cool. And that got me when the audience and he started singing those, and it was like, this is a version of Limelight that I've never heard because it's the piano ballad version of Limelight, which is funny because the topic, considering the topic, but the fact that was, done as a tribute, in front of a live audience and the audience got it, that got me. I became, kind of got choked up on that one. I was like, okay, well, that finally caught up with me. So.
Yeah.
And there were some other cool tributes, of course, but that one, I think just because it was the piano ballad, which, you don't hear Rush, don't think piano ballad when you think of Rush.
We'll now do the piano ballad version of One Little Victory. I don't know.
Right, exactly. So
it doesn't usually come out that way.
Yeah.
But.
So it just, it's just a testament, just kind of how powerful their writing was, whether you liked it or not, but, to a lot of people, the words that Neal wrote, especially something like Limelight, where he's kind of coming to terms with being famous.
Yeah.
I think is
all the world's indeed a stage, and we are merely players.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's Shakespeare, but sure, you want to attribute that to Neal Peart.
Yeah, but still, the fact that
God
he's quoting
damn it, Chris.
that,
Why, you have to just burst my fucking bubble.
I'm sorry, dude. It's from Act 2 of As You Like It. I can't just pretend like I actually don't know which act it's from, but it is from As You Like It.
That's okay.
You can't, dude. You're on a podcast with a former English teacher.
I know,
okay? You can't,
and theater geek. So I don't know what the fuck I'm thinking. Jesus.
Hey, buddy. Hey, Neal Peart quoted Shakespeare. So
there you go.
I mean, of course he did.
Yeah.
Oh, you know what? I don't think I've said
and
this
yet.
And
he quoted Paul Simon, too. So.
Yeah. The Sound of Salesman, right?
Yeah. Written on the studio wall instead of the.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great inversion of Sound of Silence. I always think like the humor in that is great. Like I've loved that always, even when I was at my most skeptical of Rush.
Yeah,
I wanted
Spirit of Radio is definitely their kind of optimism / fighting cynicism by being funny about the whole music business, the whole radio airplay and things like that. That's a whole other podcast, but
right.
But anyway, yeah.
I wanted to pull one last thing out that I want to say, and then if you guys have anything to say, we can sort of move towards wrapping it up. One of the criticisms that I had of Rush going in, and this word is thrown around a lot, but when I first was hearing, when I was first listening with Dolf, was like, here you hear a song, a whole album about a black hole or whatever, space pirates, and it was just like, oh, this is the most pretentious stuff I've ever heard, right? And that was the word that I probably would have used back then to say, well, this is pretentious, and Neal's lyrics are whatever, pretentious. And I just want to throw out to anybody out there, to begin with, if you're still skeptical of Rush and you've listened this far into the podcast, thanks, man. Thanks for giving it a shot. At least being open-minded about it. I would say, I don't think pretentious is the right word. I think for me, sometimes from the lyrical approach, not everything that he tries works. When he's telling sci-fi stories or something like that, it doesn't always work for me. Yeah. I'm not saying someone's wrong for liking it.
Kind of with you on that. I can kind of get with you.
I would say it doesn't always.
I would use the word ambitious.
Yeah.
He wasn't pretentious. He was ambitious. Yeah.
He was ambitious, and it didn't always work. But it doesn't have to work to be legitimate. You know what I mean? A legitimate attempt at something great. Yeah. And I think that when you couple it with the musicianship and all the other things that are great about Rush, Geddy's voice, which I've always liked. I know that sometimes people that's a roadblock for them, but when you couple with all that other stuff, I think you end up with something that shouldn't be dismissed so easily with a word like that.
Right.
And so this is sort of my mea culpa. I guess, all those years ago that after we met each other and I said the thing about Rush, this is my mea culpa, Dolph, to finally say I was wrong about that,
Oh, yeah. Good.
Good. So now we can be friends, Dolph, after all these...
that interview that I sent you, the interviewer asks him, do you ever listen to your old lyrics and kind of cringe? Do you ever kind of go, oh? And, to Neal's credit, he says, no. He says, I stand by everything I wrote. He goes, now, when I listen to that old stuff, I think, wow, I'm such a better writer now. I could write that better. Right. And to me, I it just made me like him more because he was like, nah, I stand by my sci. And he even says, I use sci-fi as a vehicle. I tried these different things, and to me it was like, it's someone who likes to write, and he's like, I'm a writer. I'm going to try a sci-fi story. I'm going to try a fantasy story. I'm going to try, whatever, and I like the fact that this kid was kind of like, are you sure there's not something that you're embarrassed or ashamed of? And
he wants him to
he just smiled and he said, nope. He goes, I stand by anything I ever wrote.
That's great.
He said, I just know that I could probably write it better now,
Yeah.
And so again, I go back to you're right. It wasn't pretentious. I think it was just a kid being ambitious with his lyric writing,
Well, and I think he was into world creating too. I mean,
certainly 2112 and stuff.
For sure. For sure.
Even in songs like Red Barchetta, like we were talking about the other day. I mean,
that's my favorite Rush song. Is Red Barchetta.
Dude, it's incredible.
It's in my top 5. Yeah.
But I didn't even realize, I actually didn't think there was a sci-fi angle to that song. I thought it was just a sweet, heartfelt song about a kid and his grandpa going to drive a red Camaro around the wilderness of Canada on Sunday afternoon. But no, it's about, a distant time where there was a motor law that told that said you couldn't drive cars anymore. And they had an old race car that they still drove, and it was their little secret. And if they got caught, they would be thrown in jail. That's a whole microscopic world in one song. And, that's another part of his brilliance and genius is that he could create a world big or small. He could create one the size of 2112, or he could create one the size of Red Barchetta,
Yeah.
So
that song was inspired by a short story that a guy that he read in a magazine.
Oh, really?
A guy named David Foster. I think it's like calls it like a nice Sunday drive or something. But he definitely
incorporate, or even something like Bytor and the Snow Dog, right? Which is like this sort of barbarian story, but it's really about 2 actual dogs, right? Isn't it?
Yeah,
it's really
2 dogs. Yeah. You have to get Bytor was the whole thing. Like Tor was the dog or whatever. So Bytor and the Snow Dog. Yeah. Yeah. And some of those, obviously it's like, tongue in cheek. He's being funny.
It just reminds me of a story. Sorry, when we went to see that show, of course, I knew very little about Rush. But for a little while there, I don't know if Dolph remembers it, but I was having to stand by myself because like the ticket that you had for me was kind of separate, and I think you ended up coming over by me. I think something weird. I don't remember what it was, but we ended up seeing the show together. But for a bit there, I was kind of by myself, and
some rando dude.
I'm like sitting, there's a guy next to me or whatever, and I'm like, I don't know anything about Rush, but I'm just like pretending that I do. Yeah. So I'm like, man, I sure hope they play Bytor in the Snow. That's my jam, but I don't think they ever play it. And man, I got to tell you, an underrated album, Presto. Yeah. Wow, that album like is so good, and yet nobody calls it their favorite, man. But I freaking love Presto. I agree. Yeah. But I'm just saying all this stuff that I just learned like 10 minutes ago on the drive over or whatever.
What was his response?
He was like, yeah, man. Well, he had already seen the set list clear because he's like, well, just keep watching. We'll see. He had a little twinkle in his eye. And then when Bytor starts up, now I didn't recognize it, and he was like, hey,
here it is,
and
man.
I was like, oh yeah, oh my song.
Well, what do you know?
It was just me clowning, but it was
so
just
great.
it was fun because at the end of the day, I did enjoy it,
Sure.
but it was just. It was so weird to be kind of the one guy in the crowd. You probably had those experiences where you go to a show and like everybody else knows
really
every
into
word.
this. Courtney drags me to those electronic shows sometimes, and some of them are kind of cool, and I'm definitely not invested into the music. And we would see this one guy named Bonobos, British guy, and he was actually really good. Like he plays bass and stuff too, and like some people were like super fanning and geeking out over it. I'm like, this is pretty cool, but I'm just like, I don't know his records really or anything like that. But it's good music, I'm not gonna front on it, but I totally get that.
So that was
well,
fantastic. Well, I think guys, we went like twice as long as I anticipated to do. I thought we would just crank out, maybe a little under an hour, and yet I do feel like. And what were we thinking? I mean, of course, Rush is a huge topic, and there's a lot that we can talk about. Neal's musicianship was huge, and his legacy was huge. Yeah, and that's coming from a guy who is not all bought in, as much as the rest of those Rush guys are. So or Rush fans are. It's a huge loss to music. No question.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Anything else that you guys really want to add?
I don't think so.
I think we hit the main things that I wanted to talk about about Neal for sure.
Yeah, me too.
One last thing before we go. This may be a good thing to edit on. Your kit when we were playing in Graceworks. How many pieces was in that kit? Do you remember?
Let's see. I think it was an 8, 10, 12, 16. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe. I think 6 or 7 piece. It was dumb.
What?
It was dumb.
It was huge. I just remember that we had it was a huge kit, and it wasn't it like what color was it? It was similar to what Neal was rocking at the time, wasn't it? Or am I wrong?
I think. Oh gosh,
was it Drum Workshop?
No, I think that might have been my Pearl kit. It was either the burgundy one or the.
It was the burgundy one. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So that was my Pearl kit. Yeah. So that was my cheapy kit. Yeah.
I loved it, but I remember that we had to like set up sometimes. We had like 10 minutes.
Oh my God.
And it was like trying to set all the kit up and everything, and I'm like, I got to wheel the TV in, and then help Dolph set his cymbals up or something.
Wheel the TV.
I got to.
So good. So Dolph, can you play Tom Sawyer?
It's on my iPod. Yeah, I think I could play that. Yeah.
You know what I mean, motherfucker.
You mean the drum? Well,
can you play it on the drums, Dolph?
I would say I can. I'm
got them all on my Zune.
in my mind, so I can play it.
Yeah, man. I'm sorry. I'm just messing with you, but
I could probably play about. I'm gonna be optimistic, and I'm gonna say I could probably play about 80% of it.
Okay, that's pretty good.
I would have to woodshed the drum fills for sure.
I think it's in Beyond the Lighted Stage when Neal Peart's talking about Tom Sawyer and his drum parts in Tom Sawyer, and he says it's a really hard song to play, and every time I play it right, I feel good about it. And I'm like, dude, you're Neal Peart. Of course, you play it right every time.
Yeah.
Come
Yeah.
on. So,
Yeah.
but then I listened to just the drums the next time I heard that song, and I was like, shit, this is really, really hard. Like there's
Yeah.
all kinds of crazy fills, and he's using like most of that insanely crazy kit that he has to play a lot of that stuff, and it's definitely up there. It's definitely crazy.
There's actually there's after the big fills that he does right in the middle of the song. You know, Geddy comes back. Geddy comes back and sings, and then he does one more crazy fill, and that's the hard one. So it's not the one that everyone air drums to. Those are hard, but not as hard as the one after they get out of that spot.
Yeah.
Geddy sings, and then he does this one more crazy fill.
Okay.
And I noticed live that he kind of does the live version of that, you know, because it's like, and occasionally he does the exact version of that. So
wow.
I think that's the I
one
think that's
bit
part
of,
that's the bit where he's like, okay, can I do it? Can I pull it off tonight?
Yeah.
Kind of thing, you know?
Yeah. Okay.
And
okay.
I mean, so it's like there's definitely it's a challenging song. I'm actually trying to learn. I used to could play quite a few of the easier Rush songs, but I'm actually trying to learn the drum part to Subdivisions.
Oh, yeah.
Just because, but it has.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, it's got some crazy drum fills in that too.
Yeah, it does.
So I'm kind of woodshedding, and I'm kind of out of shape. That's the other thing. Being 214 years old,
kind of wears on those joints, doesn't it?
I don't rebound. I had to woodshed a little. I've
been fighting arthritis for the last 125 years. You know,
it's
pretty tough on the old elbows.
Yeah, you don't know this because he's on the phone, but Dolf is actually 1.5 feet tall. So he didn't have the reach he used to have.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, fantastic. Well, Dolf, it's been a delight, man. I mean, you and I always have fun when we talk anyway.
Oh, sure.
And to some degree, this was just like me and Dolf talking about Rush. It's like old times, you know what I mean? But it was great having you on the on the
with
podcast.
you actually being a little positive. Yeah.
Yeah, for once. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the after podcast, that's when I start to let her
Oh,
rip.
Yeah. Once we hit stop on the record button, then we'll be like,
No. Everything that I've said is from the heart.
Back.
Yeah.
No, I know.
Today is opposite day. But guys, I do want to say before we close shop for the night, thank you guys for joining us. We're starting off season 4. This is a different way to start season 4. You know, we weren't obviously intending to start with a big kind of retrospective of Rush. It was the sad news that kind of drove it, but we were 100% excited to kick off the new season, and we've got a lot of cool stuff planned for you coming up here very soon. Marty, you got anything you want to add?
I don't think so, man. I think that's about it.
Yeah, so keep in touch with us, guys. AOTYpodcast@gmail.com. Reach out to us on the gram or whatever, Facebook, wherever. And
The gram.
The gram. We haven't been active on the gram as of late, but we need to start getting back into that and getting some stuff out on social. So now that the new season is upon us, so
yeah, you should Snapchat. Apparently, that's a thing.
Snapchat's
TikTok.
Snapchat's
Snapchat's gone,
Yeah, well, I mean, they have basically Snapchat in Instagram and Facebook now. They just have Instagram and Facebook stories.
That's
so
true.
nobody gives a shit about
True.
Snapchat anymore.
So is
weird,
it TikTok? Is it TikTok?
TikTok.
That's what we got to do.
Is that the thing?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's where
All
people lip sync videos or whatever. So
now,
if you want to lip
TikTok
sync all 2 hours of this thing, then on TikTok, let me.
So that's like TikTok is the new Vine, right?
Yeah,
Is
I
it
think so.
Vine?
Pretty much.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's
Cool.
basically like
right.
what if Vine was Instagram? That's what TikTok is basically.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right on.
Yeah. So it's kind of an amalgamation of
So
the
what
two
we
from
mean
what
is
I
it's
understand.
deeply stupid.
Yeah. Right. Exactly.
Like I said, I have college students for that. So
Yeah.
Like-
You're probably like 10 times hipper than us because they just turn you on to stuff, I would guess.
no,
right?
no.
They don't.
I just asked them. Yeah.
They don't bring you Da Baby records or anything like that.
Oh,
That's a real person, by the way, real rapper.
Is it?
Yeah.
What's it? Dub Baby?
Da Baby. D-A.
Name dropping
Baby.
tomorrow at work.
So you guys hear that new Da Baby record?
Da Baby Yoda.
I mean,
record.
you could go listen to it right now on Spotify on your Zune if you really wanted to.
Zoom classic. All right, folks. We'll see you on the other side.
All right, guys. Thanks again for listening. Dolph, thanks again for joining us. It's a lot of fun.
Hey, it was fun, man. Thanks
All right.
for asking me.
All right. Absolutely, man. Anytime. Thanks, guys.